High on a rocky ledge lives the middle Edelweiss. Fascinating song. Okay, I thought that what we would do today is let Seneca go for 1 week and talk a little bit about a concept that has been on my mind a lot recently. For no particular reason, nothing bad is going on, let me explain all that, but here's the thing. I've had discussions actually with a few people recently about death. Just came up. Wasn't bad, just came up. And one of the questions asked was, or questions that came up was, what about legacy? What about legacy? If you have children, you could say, well, my children are my legacy, but I don't have children. So then what is your legacy? And then initially my answer was, well, I am a psychology instructor at a polytechnic, so I hope that the students I have taught will remember what I have taught them, maybe have found me inspiring, may think back to my classes with some sort of positivity. I know that I do for some of the professors who taught me, and maybe that's my legacy. I certainly would be very concerned that my only legacy would be these YouTube videos, with all due respect for YouTube. I mean, that's a bit ephemeral. I guess it's getting too late. I can't speak anymore. Anyway, we seek a legacy, don't we? We seek that for ourselves, I think. And we are very good, I think, at rationalizing, well, you know, this might be my legacy, this is how I will be remembered. And then for the longest time I've thought of that, like, well, you know, I have actually initially at some point I did think, well, you know, I have my YouTube videos. And then you get, you know, well, I have a couple of publications, they will be there. And as I said, I have my teaching, and maybe I've inspired a few students, maybe, hopefully, who knows. Maybe it's my friends. Maybe people who've actually known me will remember me if they survive me, obviously, because otherwise there's little to remember. But I mean, if they survive me, maybe they will think, well, you know, he was a nice guy, helpful. I don't know how I would be remembered. It's up to them, isn't it? A little bit. I mean, up to me, but also up to them. And then I thought to myself, after 3 minutes of rambling, it was a lot more in my head, it was a long and interesting discussion, I suddenly had this thought that I don't believe I've had before, which is always fun. It's fun when you have a thought that you've not had before. And I thought, what if not having a legacy is okay? What if it's perfectly acceptable that you're gone? And that's it. Because when you think about it, those people, imagine you would have children. Your children, assuming you have a reasonable relationship with them, they will remember you, maybe positively, maybe fondly. But at some point, they will snuff it too. Then will you be remembered? Or maybe you have grandchildren. Your grandchildren, maybe they will remember you. I remember my grandparents. But I did not know my grandparents as well as my parents knew their parents, my grandparents. My grandpa, for example, he passed away 2010. I think of him, I still think of him sometimes, but whereas initially you think about a person like that a lot, I don't think about him a lot. I just don't. There certainly are moments, but I don't think about him a lot. And at some point, me being an only child, at some point I'm going to pass away too. If I end up not having children, even if I do, if I would have children tomorrow, it doesn't matter, because they have not known my grandpa, because he's gone. So at some point, everyone, these are by no means new thoughts, right? Like people have had these thoughts many times, but I mean, at some point, everyone who has known you has died. It's very brutal. It's just the way it is. Like, at some point, everyone you know is dead, and at some point, everyone who has known you is dead. And unless you have done something more or less remarkable, but if somehow you've made it to the history books, right? I don't think people will remember you. Who was the 17th president of the United States? I wouldn't be able to tell you. I have to look it up. I know it was a person, but I have to look it up. I don't know. Not from the top of my head. So I mean, even at that level, at some point you will be forgotten. You will be in the history books, and you'll be on Wikipedia. And I don't have a Wikipedia page, by the way. Sadly lacking. I mean, obviously, amazing pen reviewer. But having said that, at some point all that will be gone. And now, here's where Stoicism comes in. And I thought to myself, what would a Stoic say? What if you were to talk to one of the ancient Stoics, what would they say about this matter? And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, whether you will be remembered or not is not within your control. I don't think it is. You can certainly do things to make it more or less likely that you will be remembered. If you are a hermit and you choose to live in an apartment on your own and you never go out, you don't have any human contact. I'm making this I exaggerate a bit on purpose. Well, there won't be many people who will remember you. If you go out and you do things and you have friends and all that, you may be remembered a bit more. If you end up being the president of the United States, you will probably be remembered, for better or for worse, possibly both. But, I mean, that's how it works, right? So it is a little bit within your control, but we're not all going to be president of the United States. Most of us are not going to be an Alexander the Great. Right? Most of us are not going to be a president or an astronaut, maybe, or although how many astronauts can I name from the top of my head? Anyway, so that may not fully be within your control. But then I also thought, I think there are two Stoics who really wrote about death a lot. And they're both slightly dubious Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, who certainly has Stoic tendencies, who is considered by many a Stoic, but I mean, who hasn't really come out and said, I'm a Stoic. That hasn't happened. And then there is Seneca, and Seneca is difficult because Seneca is very eclectic. He also quotes the Epicureans, and he quotes other schools of philosophy. Seneca mainly says, well, remember, Seneca I always find very comforting because he keeps saying things like, remember, you will die. It's going to happen. Right? So be present, be here and now. But he doesn't necessarily address, in my mind, the fame issue a whole lot. But Marcus Aurelius does. He says very interesting things. And one of my favorite bits that I will say, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he says something like, soon everything will be over. Soon, everyone who is alive will be dead. Soon, they will all be forgotten. And you as well. And he's addressing himself. You as well. Emperor of Rome. Right? The Emperor of Rome, the most important person in Rome, not just Rome, the Western world as it was known at that time, right? The supreme ruler. Think of how wide the Roman Empire ran in all directions, how big a space it occupied. The most important person in that empire says, I'll be forgotten pretty soon. And then he wasn't. He wasn't. I certainly would not be able to give you from the top of my head a list of all the Roman emperors. I can name a few. Some have done good things, a lot of them have done really bad things. Marcus Aurelius is remembered because he really tried to be a good person. As far as we know. He tried to really apply Stoic principles. He tried to be an enlightened ruler. And he was still an emperor. And we've had this discussion before. He still didn't end slavery, for example. But I mean, in his ruling, he tried to be a good emperor. He tried to be as non-violent as possible. He tried all these things. And then he was remembered. Even though he thought he would not be remembered, he was remembered for being this enlightened or something, or the philosopher king in the most literal sense of the word. Now, then I thought, what if you use this? I was thinking of the necessary but not sufficient condition type terminology from mathematics. But something. What if you do your best to be the best version of yourself you can be, and that may involve applying Stoic principles. That may involve being virtuous, trying to do the right thing, wisdom and courage and temperance and justice. You try to apply all these things. You try to help others where you can. You genuinely try to be a good person. You really do your best. Maybe that is sufficient. And maybe when you do that, that's how you will be remembered. And then maybe you don't actively work towards some sort of legacy for the sake of having a legacy. But maybe it suffices to have been a good person. And maybe because you've been a good person, people said, he really did his best to be a good person. He really tried to be helpful. He really tried to be kind. Will fail sometimes, but overall, he really tried. He really did his best. I could always count on him or her. Maybe that's enough. And maybe that will spawn a legacy. Or not. But again, then it is not within your control. Then what was within your control, you have tried to do. And by doing that, you certainly can't lose, because by trying to be a good person, everybody wins. You win, and everybody around you should also win, because that's the point, isn't it? That you're good. You are virtuous. You are doing the right things. Then how could you be suffering when you're doing the right thing all the time? These were my thoughts. Please enlighten me. Tell me what your thoughts are, because I found it a very complicated topic, and again, one that I gave quite a bit of thought. So let me know what you think. That's all I have. I hope I haven't rambled too much. I appreciate your viewership. I really do. And let me know what you think. Have a good day. Bye.